So once again, we are honored to have an amazing guest speaker joining us today, Marcus Udokang. He is a multi-talented professional with various skills as an IT consultant. He is also a writer and presenter. He specializes in project management and business analysis, and he has experience in various industries, including financial services and oil and gas. And so I will now let Marcus present.
Great, thank you very much. Let me try here to share my screen. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I didn't know that PMI CWCC was involved with Toastmasters. That's amazing. I am involved with Toastmasters. Just before I get into the presentation, I want to say that. I'm an area director with a local Calgary Toastmaster club here. And I also was VP membership. In fact, I am VP membership this year, and I was last year as well for my club. So I'm actively involved with Toastmasters. That aside, let's get to today's presentation. And that's called the Brown Cow Model, Solving Business Problems and Increasing Business Resilience in a very much practical way, in a very, very practical way. So let's start off. Today I want to talk about the Brown Cow Model and how it's an efficient tool to help us really solve business problems and increase that business resilience in a practical way. Now, let's start first to look at what really it means to be resilient. Then we'll look at what the Brown Cow Model is, and we'll also look at solving business problems using the Brown Cow Model. And last but not least, how the Brown Cow Model can help businesses be more resilient. Now, building resilience is very much a priority for all of us today, especially in the world that we live in, our COVID world. So that's why I think it's very valuable to start looking at what resilience means first and foremost. And I think it's an attitude. Attitude is at the core of resilience. It's a way of thinking, a way of feeling. It's a belief system. It's our strong rope, if you want to look at it that way. And resilience also involves confidence. It enables us to be able to excel, to balance our thoughts. And there's also a degree of being energized with resilience. And by energized, I mean, you need your proper food, your adequate exercise. You need to be able to increase that physical, that mental side of things, the mental and physical strength. With resilience also comes the degree of adaptability. There has to be an openness to change. And last but not least, resilience involves being motivated. From support groups, those support groups, whether it's a meetup group, whether it's friends and family, whether it's co-workers at an office, they really enable you to validate, to be able to grow our thoughts over time. Now, when you hear resilience, you usually think about being able to adapt, to be strong, to be unwavering, to be able to endure during social and personal hardships like many of us are going through today. Resilience is the ability of being elastic, if you want. And a piece of elastic can absorb and can release energy. And it can also spring back to its original form when you let it go. And I think we as a society can bounce back during turbulent times like COVID, because we can absorb troubling times, then we can adapt, we can change, we can evolve, we can be resilient, we can bounce back. And we spend this time, like now during COVID, for some people who have been unemployed or furloughed, we spend this time learning new skills, if you will, or if we find that we have more time on our hands. And this is also the time that businesses help to reinvent themselves. And we as individuals and as society help to refocus ourselves on those priority items. And this helps us to be able to solve problems maybe a bit more efficiently. It enables us to create new ways of to learn online, maybe even. And we can all learn to adapt to new obstacles when trying times come about. And I want to bring to your attention, I thought I had a quote, I apologize, but I will give you the quote. I thought I had it on the screen, but I don't, but I will give it to you now. Maya Angelou said a quote that said, I can be changed by what happens to, I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. And I think that's a very poignant quote during times like now. Now let's look at some of the tools, resilient tools that we might want to use. Today's uncertain landscape really leaves businesses looking for tools, looking for advice, looking for inspiration. And there are many types of tools to help us adapt to change, to be innovative, to help us to evolve. And the brown cow model is certainly one of those tools. And it can help us to learn more efficiently in a very adaptive, a very flexible way. It allows us to be transformative within our business, especially for project managers and even business analysts. The brown cow model can help us efficiently navigate projects during challenging times. Another quote I want to bring to your attention is a quote by Winston Churchill, and he said, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. I think it definitely can be applied to us today. So when we look at resilience, we have to really first start with a plan. We need to start with a template to decide how we're going to structure that plan. Then we need to be able to record that plan, write up that plan, record those key processes, those key activities. We need to be able to analyze the risks in those procedures. We need to be able to use the plan during a crisis. Next, we need to be able to respond. We can respond with an action to detect, to be able to prevent, to be able to exercise your test plan. You want to be able to discuss improvements. Next, you want to be at a stage where you're improving. You're continuously improving, you're continuously updating that plan. Then you need to be able to recover. And recover by reducing that downtime, by increasing customer confidence, by being flexible, by being agile if you want. Now, before I get into the brown cow model, I just want to ask the audience here, maybe you can, I have a bit of a survey. I'm going to send you guys the survey in the chat. Let me see if I can see my chat here. I have a bit of a survey. If you click on it, feel free to, it's a questionnaire. And on the questionnaire, let me see. On the questionnaire, type in, it's a 3-word challenge for resilience. When you hear the word resilience, what are some words, what are some ideas that come to mind? Type in 1 word, press submit. Type in another word, press submit. You can type in up to 3 words if you want. So let me see. Diversity comes to mind. Leadership comes to mind. Empathy comes to mind. Fortitude. Leadership seems to be the most common one. Strength, endurance, survivor, committed, enduring. I think that pretty much says it all. Grit, a lot of diversity, empathy. I think that says it all. So that's when we talk about resilience, that's what we mean. All these things that are on the screen: leadership, strength, endurance, grit, adaptability. All right, I hope you can still see the screen. I haven't gone away from it. Now, let's take a look at the brown cow model. The brown cow model really helps us to do just all these things that we've listed, to show leadership, to show empathy, to be resilient. To be resilient. It's a platform for change in a sense, right? It helps us to be more prepared with better process, particularly when it's needed most. It allows us to plan, it allows us to respond, it allows us to recover. Now, the brown cow model fits within what we call the requirements process. And that really helps us take into account different points of view of the same problem. So you can discover and you can communicate requirements more effectively. And communication with your stakeholders is really key in the brown cow model. In a business analyst context, maybe even in a project management context, we start a situation with a current or now state, or we call that as is, as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen. And we want to be able to move to a future state or a to-be state, as you can see on the right side of the screen. And we can see that there's this separation between what's happening now versus what could happen in the future. And that's what it really is. On the left side, we've got as is or now. On the right side, we've got future or to be. So let's just get back to that state. Now, if we divide this, the now and the future, into two different sections, we create a horizontal line, and we call the top part of that horizontal line the what, and the bottom part the how. Current state can really be divided into what we call that how now, or what now. And that really divides the real world, the how, with the conceptual essence, the what. And it helps us to focus on inquisitive, on pertinent questions. How does something work? What is the problem? It gives us two very useful views. Now, the future state can be divided into the future what or the future how. And looking at a situation through these four quadrants, or if you like, four lenses of the brown cow, each is leading to different perspectives of a situation. And you might ask yourself, why are you calling this diagram the brown cow model? Well, it turns out there was an old movie from way back when called My Fair Lady. And in it, it's an old British movie, and in it, there's a scene where a man tries to teach a lady from the streets how to speak English properly, and he has her go through these elocution lessons, and she has to say, how now, brown cow, how now, brown cow. And well, the inventors of the brown cow model felt it just made sense to call this model brown cow. So that's where it originates from. And let's think above this line to redesign any work, where innovation takes place, where innovation thrives, where innovation starts to take shape. And as part of analytical skills, the business analyst or even the project manager might want to learn to explore the problem in a solution-neutral fashion. They're thinking above the line, right? The line in this case is that horizontal line, like I described it, really separates the top and the bottom quadrants of the model. You've got this abstract thinking about the real problem from a technological standpoint. So let's, to extend the thinking further, this model really allows us to question and to refine our thinking and the understanding of the group that we are working with at the office. What about short-term problems, short-term tactical problems? Can we put out fires? Can we prevent future ones? Most certainly we can do so with the brown cow model. And when an analyst investigates a business story, he or she is consciously trying to encourage innovation by first making an abstraction that uncovers the real business problem. And I want to point out that innovation is a sense of fresh thinking about a problem. And this is what the brown cow model helps us to do. It helps us to be a bit more innovative. And innovation is not the same thing as invention. Fresh thinking means that you're thinking about the problem differently. You're deriving a better, more elegant, more beneficial solution. And when you look at the same business story from different perspectives, it really helps us to discover innovations that could make a significant difference to business. Now, the brown cow model provides us the ability to recognize those issues a bit more carefully. It allows us the opportunity to provide better value to our stakeholders. It creates these challenges. It creates opportunities in a sense also. Now, let's take a look at the bottom left quadrant, the how now quadrant. Here it's where we focus on current implementations, how we do things at the moment. And this could be a role of a business analyst, a role of a product owner, the role of a project manager, the processes that we're involved in, where we are located, maybe even the business or enterprise architecture and the software that we use. How are all these things currently implemented? That's here in this quadrant, the how now quadrant. And let's take a look at the what now quadrant, the top left. And it's really totally independent from how it's done now or how it might be done in the future. And this is the essence of the business, if you want. It doesn't matter how you implement things in this quadrant. What matters are the things that have to happen. Don't think of the current implementation. Think about the data itself, maybe even the business rules, that need to be there to solve problems. They stand alone. They're independent of the solution. And we know that business rules and the data are used for decision making. It stores customer information. And the business rules really trigger the workflow. It enables automation, for example. And above that horizontal line, the analyst opens the pertinent business requirements. They try to open the door to a solution. They're trying to understand what the business is really doing. We could capture business policy, data models, raw data, which help in choosing the best, say, supplier, the best products, or the best solutions. Now, what about the future what in the upper right-hand quadrant? This section is focused on business innovation. It's here that the analyst can make suggestions for improving a business rule or using data to make more efficient and more effective business decisions. And the information here gives you a basis for developing those innovative ideas for how the business can execute the work in the future. It really defines that future what. And here you're exposed, you've exposed your understanding of the business rules, of that raw data. Now you're going to try and modify that stuff. You're going to help to improve how the business interprets the use of that particular data. Maybe you can consider the future essence. You're making new decisions. And the client might even ask you for a solution, and this is where it all starts. Now, there's also a use of business intelligence, business analytics to create maybe even new business rules, right? To answer questions that are posed by the business. You're going to automate decisions. You might be able to predict outcomes. That all comes into the future what. Let's take a look at the bottom right quadrant, the future how. This is how things could function in the future. A requirement could be really articulated here. And this is where the new implementation is considered. It's that future how. How do we make the new essence work in this new arena, in this new business model? All our business and enterprise architecture, how's it going to function in this new environment? It's going to be right here. The workflows, the technology, all these things at your disposal. Boom, right here in the future how. Now we use this model to lay bare ideas, right? It allows us to be proactive. It allows us to anticipate things. And these can give the stakeholders a degree of comfort, a degree of ease. So I've categorized these 4 quadrants. It gives a sense of order to your thinking. And it lets your client, lets your stakeholders really know that you can ask the right questions about their processes. This allows the analyst to connect with people in the right way. It allows you to create that inspiration, especially during tough times. You want a degree of order, and this gives it to you. And this can help your client really solve their problems in a very meaningful way. It's through this innovative thinking that we get innovative business value, which are incorporated even into our user stories. We don't focus on just the software, we're focusing on the business value. Now, you don't need to necessarily follow this order from the bottom left quadrant all the way up, then to the right and down again. You don't have to be in this chronological order. You may have an idea that really fits nicely into the future how quadrant. Record it there, that's fine. You don't necessarily have to visit the how now or the what now or even the future what quadrants. You still need to be able to ask questions like, what's the essence? What type of problem are we trying to solve here? Because at the essence of it all, the brown cow model is a learning and communication tool. It allows you to create structure, to create form. Now, if you're in a meeting and you've got your laptop up, maybe you've got a screen up or your tablet, or even a Miro board. And I want to give you an idea of what a Miro board might look like for those of you who might not be familiar. I've just put it into the chat. You can take a look. You don't have to use it. It's not there for you to enter information, but it kind of gives you an idea of what a Miro board looks like. And when you open up that page, if it looks small, you can zoom out by holding the control key and using your mouse to scroll in and out. Just gives you an idea of another way that you could put the brown cow model to use using a mural board. So let me try and illustrate an example of the brown cow model. And how are you going to apply it? Let's say, for example, you're applying for a job. I know we all have at some point in time used a resume, sometimes just your LinkedIn profile. And I've even seen jobs where you have to fill out a 6-page matrix form. Seems tedious, seems redundant. Why would you need a resume in addition to a LinkedIn profile as well as a 6-page matrix? Well,
hey Marcus, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
I think you posted the answer regarding the word, the word stuff. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, hang on. Let me just give you the Miro board again. Sorry, folks. My bad. There it goes. There's the Miro board. Yep. My bad.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So let's take a look at this example. Like I said, we've got a resume. I'm going to use this as a good demonstration. We're going to ask ourselves 4 questions as we try and tackle this problem. You know, say you're a job seeker, like I mentioned, and you have to directly apply to a company. And, well, they've asked you for your resume, for your LinkedIn profile, and a 6-page matrix questionnaire, and a mandatory requirement. And you're scratching your head. You're thinking, why do I need to fill out, 10 pages worth of information? This doesn't seem logical. Now, this matrix might have you include a number of questions. Believe me, I've gone through this matrix. They might ask you, what's your experience in developing business cases through a consultative approach? Or what's your experience in documenting initiatives, project background information to those initiatives? What's your experience in conducting interviews and facilitating workshops to gather and prioritize requirements? These are questions that I've taken exactly from a job matrix that I had to fill out. List down your experience building and maintaining effective relationships with business and technology partners. I question myself, aren't these the types of questions that I'd be asked in an interview? Do I have to type it all out in the matrix as well? Well, maybe we can take a look at how the brown cow model might enable us to look at each of these. So if you look at how now, you say, how is the application process done now? And what technologies are used or involved in this? And I could also say, and I give an example here, after applying for a job, a candidate's required to provide an updated resume, a LinkedIn profile, a URL, 6-page job matrix with some of the questions that I've just detailed. If you step into the what now section, what's the essence of the work, you might ask, in non-technical terms? Well, the recruiting agency acknowledges the job seeker's application. Let's go to the future what. How do we redesign the work in a more efficient context? Well, the work is to be pre-acknowledged. The work is to pre-acknowledge the job seeker's listed qualifications, the listed job role preferences, and you only really need to acknowledge to authorize those exceptions, perhaps. And the future how, and what technology needs to be used to implement that future what. Well, one example might be maybe you have a web portal where the job seeker can indicate job qualifications and job role preferences, and also indicate those exceptions. Maybe instead of manually entering the information, you could upload a resume, which populates fields automatically. You could enter other necessary information manually, perhaps if it's missing. And you could also include the URL for your LinkedIn page. Maybe as another option, as a solution for the future how, maybe an application form automatically populates information from your LinkedIn profile. So there's a number of different ways we can tackle this problem. If we just look at these 4 contexts, 4 perspectives of the how now, the what now, future what, and the future how. So the brown cow model really is this excellent way to question, to be able to refine the group understanding of a particular problem. But what if you need to solve a problem rather quickly? And this is where you might find yourself and a bit of a problem. Well, you can always, like I said, it doesn't have to be cyclical. You could bypass a step like in this demonstration. We're bypassing the future what. We're going from how now to what now to future how. I've just got a quick example here. Say, for example, you're doing your taxes, and you need to show a tax receipt to the government, but you go to your accountant and you don't have that tax receipt yet. Maybe you're attending a university overseas online, and they haven't given you your tax receipt to show that you've paid. So you want to say, well, how am I going to solve this problem? How can I do my taxes quickly without my tax receipt? Well, you look at the how now, and it might say, well, how does it work now? What are the constraints that are impeding it from working now? Well, we need that education tax form. We can't afford to wait a few weeks to receive it. That's what the problem is. Well, what now? What's the essence of the work? What does the how now represent? Well, the tax form represents the universities acknowledging that the student paid the school fees, and the federal government of your home country, acknowledges that acknowledges those school fees by physically seeing that tax form. So this allows for you to get a tax rebate or a tax credit. And if you look at the future how can we attain the same essence now to solve the problem? Well, maybe a quick fix will be the federal government can call the foreign university to validate that the student's school fees have been paid. And that's a good quick way. Or maybe you can compile all your receipts, all your unofficial PDF receipts together and give them to the accountant, and that could be a temporary fix until you get the real tax receipt later on in the mail. So, this is one way to try and help us solve the root cause of the problem. And this doesn't necessarily, do that quickly, or should I say, it doesn't necessarily solve in the long term, but it helps us to do it rather quickly on the spot before we can move to a deeper solution. So what does the brown cow model do? Well, it enables us a different way, it gives us a different way of thinking about the problem. It allows that essence, the real problem to emerge. It enables us to really be resilient. It allows us the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, to be able to spring back into shape as quickly as we can. It really provides what I like to call a prescription for positivity, with practical strategies to move from a state of uncertainty to a state of awareness to a state of acceptance. It allows us to be more flexible and adaptive during acute change. Or as I've said here, it opens doors for different perspectives of thinking about a problem. It allows the real problem to surface. It really stimulates that element of innovation and new ways, new fresh ways of thinking. It allows us to adapt to change, like I mentioned, and it builds and capitalizes on resilience. It allows us to visualize the now, to define and build the future. In essence, the brown cow model is really a requirements discovery and a specification process that can be applied to many different types of environments, enabling the analyst to be resilient, to even during a pandemic, I think. Now, there are a couple of websites I want to bring to your attention. One is the company I work for, ivasconsulting.com, and also our partner, the Lewis Institute, at lewisinstituteinc.com. I've also provided the LinkedIn pages to myself and to our partner, James Lewis. And I also run a YouTube and podcast channel called The Inquisitive Analyst. And here's where I chat with guests about business analysis and project management topics, the triumphs and challenges in those fields. And some of our guests have really included thought leaders, those up and coming in the field, and also mid-level professionals. So I've provided the two links for you folks here. And I just want to say a quick thank you for having me today from Ivas Consulting and Lewis Institute. Hopefully we've been able to give you some value with the brown cow model. I should also point out that the Lewis Institute does offer project management and project leadership courses, 6-week courses. So if at all you're interested, check them out. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so thank you, Marcus, for your highly insightful and engaging presentation. I especially enjoyed it when you mentioned about the whole job application portal. I think it's a common consensus that there needs to be, a great amount of change for the job applicant's perspective in terms of, providing a web portal where candidates can pre-fill their qualifications and preferences to escape that pain. So really appreciate how you brought such a relatable topic into the discussion. And yeah, with that said, we will now continue on to the Q&A sessions. If you have any questions you'd like to ask our guest speaker, Marcus.
Hi there. Would these slides be available?
Yes, they will be. In fact, I believe I believe they should be available. This is recorded, so they'll be available obviously in the recording. But I can give the slides to the CWCC as well, and they can send them out to you folks.
That's great. Thank you.
All right.
This will be recorded. This presentation will be recorded onto YouTube in the near future. So yeah, you can access it when that gets loaded up.
Okay. Yeah. And I was going to say too, by all means, if you want to go through that Miro board I've given you and fill out those post-it notes, feel free to do so at your own peril. There are some questions, and I think there's three sections, 3 frames. Like I said, we're not going to review it here at this session, but it certainly gives you an idea of how you can use the Miro board to engage other people and get ideas from your stakeholders when you're trying to put together the brown cow model. I think it's an excellent way to engage people online, especially during pandemic when you're not face to face. So it gives you that more human side, if you will. It gives you the participation side of things, and it engages your audience. It brings them in to make them active participants. So definitely use Miro. I highly suggest it. There's a free version out there. There's also a paid version, and I use the paid version. I think it's $20 a month. That way your audience doesn't have to log in. Each user, each person who's adding content to it doesn't have to log in. They can just add it at their own want and need. But if you have the free version, then everyone has to log in order to be able to, all the users have to log in order to be able to edit it. So just to let you know ahead of time. And I've left the screenshot on as well. Hopefully you can still see it. The how now, the what now, the future what, the future how. Great way to divide different perspectives of a problem, to categorize things, and to be able to show a sense of order with what it is your point that you're trying to get across to your stakeholders. So.
Oh yeah, so we have another question. So Marcus, do you have any real life examples of using this model?
Well, I do. In fact, that very example I've given you about the application process, I had to fill out for the government of Alberta, I had to fill out a matrix. Can you believe the government wanted me to fill out a 6-page matrix on all these types of questions, projects I had been on, analyst jobs I had done, and how I can relate them to the requirements of the job. And they also wanted the LinkedIn profile. They also wanted the resume. The tax example is another example I've done as well. I'm taking an MBA with a foreign university, and I have to hand in a tax receipt. So that was a perfect example of what I've done in real life using the brown cow model to try and solve my problems. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember I had a friend who just decided not to apply to a position because he complained about just the sheer quantity of paperwork and the number of steps involved. And so this even deterred highly qualified candidates from getting the job.
Yeah, and actually I'd recommend, why don't you call up the company and say, look, I've got a solution or a suggested solution to try and minimize this issue. And why don't you hire me to try and fix that? You could take it to that far, or you could just say, here's my solution, and if you want to call me for a chit chat later on, we can do that too.
That's a great way of selling the pen there, Marcus.
Yeah, so. Actually, the brown cow model, the question was from Jordan Laboon, is the brown cow model fairly universal in application, or are there times when not to use the brown cow model? I did mention that it's used during the requirements process. In fact, this is a very popular model. And they're on the slide that shows adapted by, in the bottom left-hand corner of this particular slide I have up now, it says adapted from Robertson and Robertson 2013. So Robertson and Robertson are a husband and wife team that came up with the brown cow model. So I'm really just articulating what they've already been able to write about in books, requirements analysis books. So yes, very much so. It is out there, it is used. They're from the UK, so this is a bit more popular out there in Europe or in the UK as opposed to here. But most certainly, it's definitely for the requirements analysis side of a business. Mostly for business analysts, but project managers most definitely can use it too, as I've explained. From Joanna, we said, how quick do you think you can teach a team to use this model together? Well, I think usually I've seen 6-week trainings, I've seen 2-week trainings, and I've seen a crash course over a couple of days. So I think you could probably do a quick crash course to try and get just a high-level idea of how it works. Then we can go a bit deeper after that. Is there any quadrant that cannot be skipped? No, you don't have to use, you can skip any quadrant. And I'm just going to give you the other example here. That was a good, perfect example of how one quadrant was skipped. We could have just gone straight into the how now or straight into the future how without going to the other 2 previous quadrants. It just gives you an idea to be able to separate, say, business rules, the technical side, with the solution, with the future solution versus, you know, the current way things are done, the as-is way. So I don't think there's any specific quadrant that needs to be done. Eventually, you might want to fill out all 4, but to start out with, most certainly you don't need all 4 quadrants in the beginning.
What's the reason why you would skip the future what? Is it because the what is the same, it's just the how it's different? Is that why you can omit the step?
It all comes down to time. In this case of the tax form example, I wanted to be able to get my taxes in today when the deadline was due, or you know, the deadline is the next day or a day or 2 from now, and I don't have time to sit down and figure out the future what. I need the future how. So it could be an issue of time that reduces it. It's all about value, right? What's more valuable to do first? Is the brown cow model used just for business analysis, or can it be used by project management as well? I think primarily it would be used by business analysts in the requirements process, but that requirements process has to be managed by a project manager. So I think it's good for project managers to understand this, at least at a high level, so they can understand what the business analyst is articulating to them. Hope that solves hope that answers the problem, the question, Darren, or helps solve the problem. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Darren. So I think I answered Darren's question, David's, Jana's question, Jordan's as well, and also Noblehurst's question. And just want to re-emphasize the survey that was given out. If you want to fill that on the link that was provided, that would be great too. In case we lost it. Fantastic. We've actually got 55. I think I saw 64 people. We're down about 55. That's actually pretty good, considering the number of people that registered. So that's fantastic. So I want to thank you folks once again for participating in this presentation. I tried to make it short because I know you guys do lunch hour presentations. I do have a longer version of it, but I didn't want to take up more time than necessary. So hopefully this worked out.
Hey Marcus, this is Ed.
Yep.
I just wanted to add that under the PMI scope management plan, project managers are responsible for gathering requirements. So definitely applies, this model definitely applies to project managers as well as business analysts.
Thank you for that. Good to know. Good to note as well.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you, Marcus, for the very engaging Q&A session. I think it probably cleared up quite a few of the questions that we had just about the brown cow model.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.